Hello, my friend. Welcome back to our channel. How are you today? I hope you are doing great, and I hope you're ready for a truth that goes against everything we're usually taught. Because most of us believe success only comes from pushing harder, never stopping, never resting. But there's a quiet power most people overlook completely. A power hidden not in constant effort, but in knowing exactly when to step away. Today, we are starting a brand new 6-lesson series about this exact power. About rest, distance, and pause, and how they can often accomplish what forcing and pushing never could. Before we begin, do one small thing for me. Press the like button. It takes only 1 second for you, but it means the whole world to us. Okay, are you ready? Let's begin with Lesson 1. Lesson 1. Not every problem is solved by staying. We've been taught since childhood that quitting is weakness and staying is strength. Push harder, never give up, keep going no matter what. And in many situations, this advice is valuable and true. But there is one part of this advice we rarely question. Staying is not always the same as pushing forward. Sometimes, staying stuck in the same spot, forcing the same effort again and again, isn't strength at all. It's simply exhaustion disguised as determination. Think about someone trying to open a stubborn, rusted lock. They twist the key harder, push with more force, try again and again with growing frustration. But no matter how much force they apply, the lock refuses to open. What that person often doesn't realize is that stepping away for just a moment, taking a breath, returning with a clearer mind, sometimes reveals a small adjustment they completely missed while forcing it in frustration. This is exactly how it works with many struggles in our lives too. When you're stuck on a difficult problem, when you can't find the right English word, when you feel completely blocked on something important, your first instinct is usually to push harder, stay longer, try more forcefully. And sometimes that works. But often, especially when frustration has taken over, pushing harder simply tightens the same lock further rather than opening it. Stepping away is not the same as giving up. This is one of the most important distinctions to understand. Giving up means walking away permanently, abandoning the goal entirely. Stepping away means creating temporary distance, allowing your mind to rest, reset, and often return with clarity that constant forcing could never provide. Many of the best ideas, solutions, and breakthroughs don't arrive while someone is intensely staring at the problem. They arrive later, during a walk, during a shower, during a quiet moment completely unrelated to the problem itself. This isn't a coincidence. When you step away from intense focus, your mind continues working quietly in the background, without the pressure and tension that often blocks clear thinking in the first place. Here are 3 simple truths about the power of stepping away. First, frustration rarely leads to clarity. When you notice yourself forcing something with growing tension, that is often the exact moment to pause, not push harder. Second, stepping away is not weakness, it's strategy. Athletes rest between efforts, not because they're lazy, but because rest is part of how strength is actually built. Third, distance often reveals what closeness hides. Sometimes you cannot see the simple solution because you are standing too close to the problem itself. Remember this, my friend. Not every lock opens through more force. Sometimes it opens through a pause, a breath, and a return with a clearer, calmer mind. Let's do a quick recap. Pushing harder isn't always the answer, especially when frustration has replaced clear thinking. Stepping away temporarily is not giving up. It's often the exact space needed for clarity to return. Here is your challenge for today. If you're feeling stuck or frustrated with something today, step away for just a few minutes. Take a walk, breathe, and return with a calmer mind before trying again. You don't always need more effort, my friend. Sometimes you simply need a little space. Lesson 2. Silence is where clarity lives. We live in a world that is rarely quiet. Notifications, noise, constant conversation, endless information flowing into our minds every single hour. And in the middle of all this noise, we're expected to somehow think clearly, make wise decisions, and understand what we truly want. But clarity rarely appears in the middle of noise. Clarity lives in silence, and most people almost never give themselves access to it. Think about how rarely you actually sit in true silence, without a phone, without background noise, without something demanding your attention. For many people, even a few minutes of true quiet feels uncomfortable, almost unbearable. We fill every gap with something, music, scrolling, conversation, because silence forces us to face our own thoughts directly, without distraction to soften them. But this discomfort is exactly why silence is so valuable. When you remove the constant noise, you create space for something important to surface. The thoughts, feelings, and realizations that noise usually drowns out completely. Many people go through entire weeks, even months, never truly hearing their own inner voice, simply because they never step away from the noise long enough to listen. This is especially true when facing an important decision. Most people try to think their way through big decisions while still surrounded by constant noise and distraction, and then wonder why the answer feels so unclear. But the mind rarely produces its best thinking under constant stimulation. It needs quiet space to sort through everything it's holding, to separate what truly matters from what's simply loud and urgent. Even in learning English, this principle applies. Constantly consuming more content, more lessons, more information without ever pausing to quietly absorb and practice what you've already learned often creates more confusion than progress. Sometimes, stepping away from new input and simply sitting quietly with what you already know allows real understanding to settle in. Here are 3 simple truths about the power of silence. First, silence is uncomfortable at first because it removes distraction from your own thoughts. This discomfort fades with practice, and clarity begins to take its place. Second, big decisions deserve quiet space, not constant noise. Step away from distraction before trying to think through something important. Third, silence isn't empty, it's productive. Even when nothing seems to be happening, your mind is quietly organizing, processing, and preparing insights that noise would otherwise block. Remember this, my friend. The answers you're searching for are rarely found in more noise. They're usually found in the quiet space you've been avoiding. Let's do a quick recap. Constant noise blocks clarity, while silence creates the space needed for real understanding to surface. Stepping away from distraction, even briefly, allows your mind to process what truly matters. Here is your challenge for today. Spend just 5 quiet minutes today with no phone, no noise, no distraction. Simply sit and notice what surfaces in your mind. You don't need more information today, my friend. Sometimes, you simply need more silence. Lesson 3. Distance gives you perspective that closeness cannot. When you stand too close to a large painting, you cannot see the full picture. You only see brushstrokes, colors, small sections without meaning. Step back, create distance, and suddenly, the whole picture becomes clear. This isn't just true for paintings. It's true for almost every problem, decision, and struggle in your life. When you're deeply immersed in a problem, emotionally close to a difficult situation, your perspective naturally narrows. Small issues feel enormous. Temporary setbacks feel permanent. A single mistake feels like proof of complete failure. This isn't because the situation is actually as serious as it feels. It's because closeness distorts perspective, making everything feel bigger and more urgent than it truly is. Think about how differently a problem feels after a few days pass, compared to the moment it first happened. In the heat of the moment, a difficult conversation, a mistake, a setback can feel overwhelming, even devastating. But after some distance, after time and space separate you from that intense moment, the same situation often looks much smaller, much more manageable than it did originally. The situation didn't change. Your distance from it did. This is why stepping away, even temporarily, often reveals solutions and perspectives that staying too close could never offer. When you're standing directly inside a problem, you can only see it from one angle, the anxious, urgent, close-up angle. But when you step back, even just for a day, you begin to see the wider picture, the other angles, the parts of the situation you couldn't notice while standing so close. This applies to learning too. If you make a mistake speaking English and immediately judge yourself harshly in that exact moment, the mistake can feel much bigger than it actually is. But if you step away and revisit that same mistake later with some distance, you'll often see it clearly for what it actually was. A small, forgettable moment, not the disaster your closeness made it feel like. Here are 3 simple truths about the power of distance and perspective. First, emotional closeness distorts size. Problems almost always feel bigger while you're standing directly inside them than they do once you've stepped back. Second, time creates distance naturally. If you can't create physical distance immediately, even waiting a day before reacting can offer significant clarity. Third, perspective is not avoidance. Stepping back to see the wider picture is not the same as ignoring the problem. It's simply choosing to see it more clearly before responding. Remember this, my friend. You cannot see the whole painting while your face is pressed against the canvas. Sometimes, the wisest thing you can do is simply take a step back. Let's do a quick recap. Closeness to a problem often distorts how large and urgent it truly feels, while distance offers a clearer, wider perspective. Creating space, even briefly, often reveals solutions and clarity that staying too close cannot. Here is your challenge for today. If something feels overwhelming right now, try creating a small amount of distance, whether through time, space, or simply a short pause, before reacting. The full picture is waiting for you, my friend. Sometimes you simply need to take one step back to see it. Lesson 4. Rest is not the opposite of progress. There is a belief many people carry without ever questioning it. Rest is the opposite of progress. If you're not actively working, pushing, producing, you're falling behind. This belief keeps people running constantly, afraid that the moment they stop, everything they've built will crumble. But this belief is not only exhausting, it's simply untrue. Think about how a muscle actually grows. It doesn't grow during the workout itself. the workout only creates small amounts of stress and tiny tears in the muscle fibers. The actual growth happens afterward, during rest, when the body repairs and strengthens itself in response to that effort. If you skip rest and train the same muscle every single day without recovery, you don't get faster results. You get injury, exhaustion, and eventually breakdown. Rest isn't separate from the growth process. Rest is part of the growth process. Your mind works in a strikingly similar way. When you're constantly pushing, constantly consuming new information, constantly practicing without any pause, your mind doesn't get stronger faster. It gets tired, overwhelmed, and less able to actually absorb what you're trying to learn. Real understanding, real skill, often solidifies not during the intense effort itself, but during the quiet rest that follows it. This is why two people can study the exact same amount, practice English with the exact same intensity, and still get different results. One person pushes constantly, never resting, believing more hours always equals more progress. Their mind grows tired, and their ability to absorb new information slowly declines, even while they keep pushing forward. The other person studies with real focus and then rests intentionally, allowing what they've learned to settle and strengthen. Even with fewer total hours, this second approach often produces stronger, more lasting results because rest gave the learning a chance to actually take root. Rest is not laziness. Rest is not falling behind. Rest is the invisible half of every growth process, the half that happens quietly, without applause, but without which real progress cannot fully happen at all. Here are 3 simple truths about rest and progress. First, growth happens in the pause, not just in the push. Constant effort without recovery often produces less progress, not more. Second, tiredness is a signal, not a weakness. When your mind or body feels exhausted, this is information, not something to override through pure willpower. Third, intentional rest is different from avoidance. Resting because you've worked with real focus is very different from avoiding effort altogether. One builds strength, the other builds excuses. Remember this, my friend. Even the ground needs a season to lie still before it can produce a strong harvest again. Constant, unbroken effort exhausts soil, just as it exhausts a mind. Let's do a quick recap. Rest is not the opposite of progress. It's an essential part of it. Real growth requires both focused effort and genuine recovery, and skipping one weakens the entire process. Here is your challenge for today. After your next focused effort today, whether it's practicing English or working toward any goal, give yourself intentional rest afterward, without guilt. You don't need to push every single moment, my friend. Sometimes, the most productive thing you can do is simply allow yourself to rest. Lesson 5. Sometimes walking away is how you find your way back. There is a moment that happens to almost everyone at some point in their journey. A moment where you feel so tangled, so overwhelmed, so lost inside a problem or a goal, that you can no longer see any way forward at all. In this moment, most people believe they only have one option: push through, no matter how confused or exhausted they feel, because stopping feels like admitting defeat. But there is a second option, one that often works far better than forcing your way through confusion, and that option is simply walking away completely for a while, in order to eventually find your way back with far more clarity than before. Let me explain what this actually looks like, because it's easy to misunderstand at first. Walking away, in this sense, doesn't mean abandoning your goal forever. It doesn't mean deciding English isn't worth learning anymore, or that your dream isn't worth chasing. It means recognizing that sometimes the most tangled knot cannot be untangled by pulling harder. Sometimes, the very act of stepping back, releasing your grip completely for a while, is what finally allows the knot to loosen on its own. Think about someone who has been working intensely on a difficult goal for months, pushing every single day without ever truly stepping back. Over time, their relationship with that goal starts to change. What once felt exciting begins to feel heavy. What once felt like passion begins to feel like pressure. Eventually, even though they're still technically working toward the goal, something important has quietly disappeared: their genuine connection to why they started in the first place. This is what constant, uninterrupted pushing often does. It doesn't just tire the body, it slowly disconnects you from your original motivation. When this happens, walking away completely for a period of time, not forever, but intentionally, can restore something that constant pushing was slowly destroying. Distance allows exhaustion to fade. It allows pressure to release. And often, after enough time away, something surprising happens. The same goal that once felt heavy and overwhelming starts to feel exciting again, simply because you gave yourself permission to step back before returning. This is very different from quitting. Quitting closes the door completely and walks away without any intention of returning. Walking away, the way we're describing here, is more like closing the door gently, resting, and then choosing, freely and intentionally, whether and how you want to return. Often, people who take this kind of intentional break return with more clarity, more energy, and more genuine motivation than they had before stepping away at all. There's also something deeper happening during this kind of pause. While you're away from the intense focus of your goal, your mind doesn't simply stop working on it completely. In the background, quietly, without pressure, your mind continues processing, connecting ideas, working through confusion in ways that focused effort alone often cannot achieve. This is why so many important realizations happen not during the struggle itself, but afterward, during rest, during distance, during the space created by walking away. Consider someone struggling deeply with a specific part of learning English, feeling stuck, frustrated, convinced they'll never improve in that particular area. If they force themselves to keep drilling the same frustrating point, day after day, without any break, their frustration often deepens and their confidence often weakens further. But if they step away from that specific struggle for a period of time, focus on something else entirely, and return to it later with fresh eyes, they often find the exact same material feels more manageable, sometimes even easier, simply because the pressure and frustration had time to fade. Here are 3 simple truths about the power of walking away and returning stronger. First, walking away is not quitting when it's done with intention. There's a meaningful difference between closing a door forever and stepping back to breathe before choosing your next move. Second, distance can restore what constant effort slowly drains. Passion, motivation, and clarity often return not through more pushing, but through the space created by stepping away. Third, your mind continues working even when you're not actively focused on the problem. Some of your best insights will arrive not during the struggle, but during the rest that follows it. Remember this, my friend. A bow must be pulled back before an arrow can fly forward. Sometimes, stepping away isn't moving backward at all. It's simply the pullback needed before your next stronger step forward. Let's do a quick recap. Constant, uninterrupted effort can quietly disconnect you from your original motivation and clarity. Walking away intentionally, not as quitting, but as a genuine pause, often restores exactly what constant pushing was slowly draining. Here is your challenge for today. If there's something you've been forcing yourself through with growing frustration, give yourself permission to step away from it completely for a short period, without guilt, and notice how you feel when you return. You are not falling behind, my friend, by stepping away when you truly need to. Sometimes, the way forward begins with a step back. Lesson 6. The strength to stop is as important as the strength to start. We have spent 5 lessons exploring a truth that goes against almost everything we're normally taught. We learned that not every problem is solved by staying and pushing harder. We learned that silence, not noise, is where real clarity lives. We learned that distance offers perspective that closeness can never provide. We learned that rest is not the opposite of progress, but an essential part of it. And we learned that sometimes, walking away completely with intention is exactly how you find your way back stronger than before. Today, in our final lesson, I want to bring all of this together and reveal the deepest truth underneath every lesson we've covered. We are taught from a very young age to celebrate the strength to start. Start the new habit. Start the difficult conversation. Start chasing the goal, no matter how afraid you feel. And this strength matters deeply. It truly does. But there is another strength, quieter, far less celebrated, that matters just as much, and almost nobody teaches it to us at all. The strength to stop. Not stop permanently. Not give up completely. But the strength to recognize, honestly and without shame, the exact moment when continuing to push is no longer serving you, and stepping away has become the wiser choice. This kind of stopping requires something that pure willpower alone cannot provide. It requires self-awareness, humility, and a willingness to let go of the idea that constant forward motion is always the same thing as progress. Think about 2 people, both working toward the same meaningful goal over several years, let's say, mastering fluent English. Person A treats every moment of struggle as a battle to win through sheer force. Every difficulty, they push harder. Every sign of exhaustion, they ignore it and keep going. Every moment where stepping back might help, they interpret as weakness and refuse to allow themselves that space. Over time, this constant, unbroken pushing doesn't accelerate their progress. It slowly damages it. Their motivation quietly erodes. Their relationship with learning becomes associated with exhaustion and pressure instead of curiosity and growth. Eventually, without ever consciously deciding to quit, they simply burn out completely and stop altogether, not by choice, but by depletion. Person B, walking the exact same difficult road, learns something different along the way. They learn to notice the difference between productive struggle and destructive forcing. When effort feels focused and engaged, they push forward with full commitment. But when effort turns into frustration, when forcing replaces genuine progress, they allow themselves to step away intentionally, without guilt, trusting that this pause is part of the process, not a betrayal of it. They rest when rest is needed. They create silence when noise has clouded their thinking. They create distance when closeness has distorted their perspective. And because of this, years later, they haven't burned out. They're still moving forward, not because they pushed harder than person A, but because they knew when pushing needed to pause. This is the deepest truth this entire series had been building toward. Strength is not only measured by how hard you can push. It is also measured by how wisely you know when to stop, rest, step back, and return. A person who never learns to pause eventually breaks under the weight of constant forcing. A person who learns the rhythm of effort and rest, of pushing and stepping away, builds something that lasts far longer and grows far deeper than constant force ever could. Think about the ocean tide for a moment. The tide does not rush toward the shore endlessly, without ever retreating. It moves forward, and then it pulls back again and again in a natural, powerful rhythm. And yet, over time, this same rhythm, forward and back, is what shapes entire coastlines, carves stone, and moves mountains of sand, not through constant, unbroken force, but through the wisdom of its rhythm. Stepping away is not the tide failing to reach the shore. Stepping away is simply part of how the tide builds its power to reach further the next time. Your life, your goals, your learning journey deserve this same rhythm. Not constant, unbroken pushing, which eventually exhausts and breaks you, but a wise rhythm of forward effort and intentional pause, each one strengthening the other, each one making the next forward step more powerful than forcing alone ever could. Let's talk about 3 final truths to carry with you from this series. First, knowing when to step away requires as much wisdom and courage as knowing when to push forward. Neither one, alone, creates lasting progress. Second, stepping away is not a single event. It's a practice, a rhythm you return to again and again throughout every meaningful goal you pursue. Third, the people who sustain progress over years, not just weeks, are rarely the ones who push the hardest without pause. They're the ones who learned the rhythm of effort and rest and trusted that rhythm completely. Remember this, my friend. You were never meant to move forward constantly, without pause, without rest, without stepping away when it's needed. Even the strongest rivers curve, slow, and pause in certain places before continuing onward with renewed force. Let's do a quick recap of everything we've learned in this series. Not every problem is solved by staying and forcing harder. Sometimes stepping away reveals what pushing could not. Silence creates the space for clarity that constant noise blocks completely. Distance offers a wider, clearer perspective that closeness distorts. Rest is not separate from progress. It's an essential part of how real growth happens. Walking away, when done with intention, often restores exactly what constant pushing was quietly draining. And finally, true strength isn't only the strength to start and push forward, it's also the wisdom to know when to stop, rest, and step away. Here is your final challenge, my friend. The next time you feel yourself forcing something with growing frustration and exhaustion, don't automatically assume the answer is to push harder. Pause and ask yourself honestly, do I need more effort right now? Or do I need to step away? The power of stepping away was never about giving up, my friend. It was always about trusting that rest, distance, and pause are not the opposite of progress. They are quietly, powerfully part of it. And that brings us to the end of today's journey, my friend. We learned that stepping away is not weakness, and it's not giving up. It's often the exact space you need to return stronger, clearer, and more capable than before. If these words gave you permission to rest today, please share this video with someone who feels like they can't stop pushing. And if you believe rest and effort belong together, not against each other, this channel is a must-follow for you. We don't just teach English here. We teach life-changing lessons that can transform the way you think, speak, and live. So please, subscribe today. Not just for us, but for the balance you deserve to build in your own life. Thank you for spending this time with me. Rest when you need to, my friend. Take care, and see you soon.